It's always a challenge to know which epics you should be leveling up and mastering and making work for your team. So I thought today what we'd do is go through every faction and talk about the best Void epic in that faction. Welcome, I'm the Deadwoodjedi. As you can tell, I don't have the normal hat on because I'm on the road today and I just didn't pack it with me. I have a wedding out here for my family, so that's really exciting. And then we're actually going to Europe for like 10 days or so, about 2 weeks. So hopefully I'll get to meet some of our other favorite raid content creators while I'm there. But in the meantime, I wanted to kind of get used to recording a little bit on the road. I haven't recorded in a while. And so this is my attempt to kind of get back in the swing of things. And so I thought today we'd look at all the Void epics that are in this game and try and pick out the best one for each faction. I always find it difficult with the epics, especially because they have so many different skills and so many different ways you can utilize them, but it's difficult to say, where do I want to put them? Which ones do I want to use? Which ones should I concentrate on? And so I thought we'd look at the best Void epics for each faction, and hopefully that'll give you guys a little bit of a clue of who to build up and who to look at. And so that's what we're going to do today. So 14 champions to go. Let's start with the first one here. So as we go in with the Bannerlord faction, right, they have a few interesting options. Rowan, Azure, neither one of those are really top tier. Like, you don't build them unless, you know, you have too many champions like myself. You're trying to do content on them, or, you know, they're fitting some niche build that you're working on. The two that you'd want to look at are Warcaster, who has a block, block damage on all allies for 1 turn. That can be really useful in things like Clan Boss. But I think the choice is actually Ursula the Mourner. And the big reason why is she is just one of the most all-around good champions for you, especially the earlier you are in the game. She does a lot for your team. One of the biggest things is she brings a revive. That's really hard to find early on. It's really powerful, and it's an AoE revive. Revives all your allies. On top of that, she also places increased defense and strengthen. So your allies don't have to be dead to utilize the skill. That's nice. That gives her an extra ability there for your team. So if you survive and you don't need the revive, she's still going to bring in some really good protection buffs for you. If you do die a lot, she'll bring them back to life. On top of that, we have this A2, which is decrease attack and also increase attack. So the increase attack is really valuable for making your team hit harder, right? That's a super valuable skill when you're trying to go through waves or whatever. But the decrease attack is also going to help your team survive. And that's one of the most important debuffs you can bring almost in any content that you're doing. And so bringing both of those is actually a huge boon for her. So you can build her with accuracy and get a lot of value, or not, and just have her be that protection, revive, or buffer for your team, and that can work really nicely as well. And then the A1 has a chance of decreasing target's turn meter. This is not a crucial skill. It's only like a 10% decrease. It's only, you know, a single hit ability, but it is at least useful in when you have it. So that's not a bad one. Also on top of that, her Doom Tower speed aura, that can be really, really useful. And Doom Tower is one of those areas where you feel like you might ignore it through a lot of the game, but it's super valuable to get some extra rewards, and you get them every month, and it's basically free. And so being able to have somebody that can help you climb that can be really, really helpful. And that 24 extra speed is really valuable, especially as you start getting the higher levels of the Doom Tower. Also, she's got solid base stats, right? Good speed, 102. Attacks decent, defense is decent, HP is pretty solid, so her surviving isn't crazy hard. You can build her in a variety of different ways as a result. That's why Ursula definitely wins for Bannerlords. All right, now if we move over to High Elves, they do not have a lot of really great epics. It's honestly a kind of a challenge. I mean, Exemplar is pretty much not noteworthy, and Dtha has a lot of limitations. Ethlin is kind of interesting as far as like being maybe like a nuker type champion, but honestly, for all that, I still think Battle Sage is the best one. There's 2 reasons for this. One is that she's one of those few champions that has an AoE buff cleanse, right? AoE debuff cleanse. That's pretty massive. Plus the increased attack is huge. The other big reason is she's got an AoE attack on her A1, which means you put her in a stun set or provoke set or something else that can be extremely productive for your team. And so no matter what level of the game you're at, she can be really useful, and you can build her in a lot of different ways as a result of that. On top of that, she does have an all speed, are all battle speed aura, which is really nice and universally good. So there's a lot to like about our kit. The revive on death is not crazy good because it's only single target. Honestly, I'd love to see this reworked where that becomes an AoE ability, and that would really take her to a top tier champion. None of these four are going to be champions that you're going to want to break the bank out to build up. I don't think so, but if you're going to have to choose one, I would choose Battle Sage. Okay, now we're here with Sacred Order, and Sacred Order, they've got some really tough choices actually. This is maybe one of the most difficult choices to have because you got Cardinal, who's just an awesome reviver. Lightsworn's okay, but not really crazy worth building. But Inquisitor Ishmael is a Hydra killer, and then Godseeker Aniri is just so good everywhere. So for me, even though Inquisitor Ishmael is like insane for Hydra, I'm going to go with Godseeker Aniri because her utility is just so much broader. And of course, we all know how great she can be for Sand Devil. It really just makes that whole dungeon possible. But she's great literally everywhere. She has healing all throughout her kit. Off her A1, it heals. Off her A2, it heals. But the most important thing about her is not the A2, which extends duration of buffs and decreases duration of enemy buffs. Is like a really nice skill, right? Even as an AoE. But the big one is actually her A3 and her passive, which are both revive abilities. A3 not only does it revive an ally, but it resets their cooldowns on all their skills when that happens. That's really powerful. And then the passive ability here, which will revive automatically, basically. It's a pretty strong kit. I've seen her used to good effect in Arena, not recently, but in the past, and if you're a new player coming up, not a bad choice to use there, especially as a go second type of team. But she's incredibly good in areas like Ice Golem. She's incredibly good in areas like Fire Knight. Really great, obviously, in Sand Devil Necropolis as well. So, and of course, you know, Clan Boss, she's insane. She's actually really good for Hydra too. So this is one of those champions that just has so much utility everywhere. And has such a unique thing with that passive revive ability. I just can't not choose her. Like, she's just too good to leave off this list. Okay, and if we go over to the Barbarians, we've got a few options here. This is another one of the ones that I think is kind of weak. Now, there's a lot of people that are going to be choosing Sky Touch Shaman as their best Void Epic. And look, guys, if you disagree with anybody on this list, let me know in the comments down below. This is just my personal list, but I think there's definitely some choices here. But she's an insane healer, but not my choice, because her passive ability makes her a little bit tricky to use. For me, I really like Suwai. And now, the Harkin Greatblade is another solid option for you, but none of these champions are really going to stand out. What I do like about Suwai is she's kind of an all-rounder and really good at it. She hits hard. Her A1 hits really hard, places decreased defense. Her A3 hits hard, really hard actually, and has a weaken ability. And then her A2 has a decreased attack. Now, if you think about something like Clan Boss, Suwai is kind of perfect. She gives you decreased defense, weaken, and decreased attack. All the things you absolutely need for that level of the game. So there's a lot to bring in here, but even if you're talking just wave content, those are exactly what you need, right? The decreased attack is AoE, so it's gonna hit all the enemies. The A3 with the weakened single target, so the A1, but they both hit a lot harder than that A2 as well. So there is some really solid utility out of her kit. Is she a must build? No, honestly, not really. She is definitely somebody where if you have some extra XP to throw around, I would toss it toward her. I find her to be really useful, and if you're looking for a damage dealer for Clan Boss, I think she is a really good choice, but none of these champions are going to be top tier. Talking about Ogen now, and I think this one actually is a pretty simple choice. Out of all of them, this might be the easiest out of all the choices, because I mean, we've got some really good options here. Prundar, who needs 1.5 million books, actually pretty solid champion. Towering Titan's terrible. Urgrim is, has some real good utilities, the speed aura, the poisons, the healing. Skrank is one of the hardest hitters in this game. But obviously it's Maneater. I mean, this guy just does too much unique stuff, right? Unkillable for 2 turns, block debuffs for 2 turns. He has a turn meter decrease, which gets overlooked all the time because of the unkillable teams we build, but it's such a strong ability. Decrease attack on the A1, and just like everything about his kit screams awesome. Now, obviously, he's going to be really good in things, you can build some awesome Hydra teams, some Clan Boss teams, Iron Twins teams, just an amazing champion. Even really good for things like Sand Devil. Some of those teams can be utilizing a Maneater. It's just, he's amazing champion. He's just been around for so long. We're so used to him. I think we overlook him sometimes. But yeah, easy choice. Now, talking Lizardman, it's a little bit tougher. Slixus is interesting. Scathix is pretty solid, but I think we have to go with the, permanent fusion Broadma. I think since Broadma's kit has been reworked, really kind of a top tier, well, not top tier, but a really solid epic champion. None of these are ones I would break the bank for, but Broadma is definitely the one I would go for out of all of them. The two reviving two champions, placing a block damage buff on them, which can be really useful considering when a champion gets revived, they usually have low health and are, prime suspects to get knocked down again. It's a pretty massive little, little ability there. And most importantly, it's on a 4-turn cooldown, which means it's going to be coming up pretty regularly. But on top of that, also brings an increased speed buff. The low version, sure, but it's still a version of making your team faster. That's some nice utility on top of the revive, and has a pretty solid chance, booked up to 45% of freezing on that A1. That's a pretty good little, control ability. Good speed, base speed at 104, and good survivability stats means Broadma, I think, is actually a pretty solid reviver. The earlier in the game, obviously, once you get the later stages, basically once you get Arbiter, you don't really need Broadma. But up until then, I think can be a really good option for you. Okay, talking Skinwalkers, this choice is super easy, actually. It's going to be a Kemptum, right? Basher has some real utility being able to lock down ability enemy skills in Arena. Don't overlook that. But Werrigan, Frenzy, I don't really care for either of them. But a Kemptum is just amazing. The only real champion that has this unique passive ability with the Hex, where when damage is inflicted from poison, it hits all their allies as well, so the poisons become AoE damage. It's a really powerful ability. He does get to play Hex AoE, does put poisons, and has debuff spread ability, and just as importantly has that AoE, or the all battle speed aura. All that's really, really nice, and it makes a Kemptum really useful. Even if you just forget his passive and just go, well, the guy's got poison, he's got Hex. What more do you want? That's a pretty nice thing, especially with the speed aura. Then when you factor in the passive ability, it makes him a killer, obviously, for spiders. I think, top tier choice for spider, especially hard difficulty. But also, pretty decent even in things like Hydra. Anywhere you can benefit from Hex, a Kemptum is going to be insane for you. And then it brings us to Orcs, and this is another very, very simple choice here. There are some decent options, I guess you'd say, actually, I'll be honest, none of these champions are any good, really. Not saying any good. Liburga maybe has some abilities for you that you could utilize, right? Some poison sensitivity, stuff like that. Not bad, but really it's Seer. It's all about Seer. Seer is just like the preeminent champion, the best wave clearer in the game, especially if you can get her with like a 6-star crushing Ren blessing. She becomes absolutely insane and just like taking down all the waves, one-shotting them without really any prep or setup needed. It's just all about that A3 ability, just strips all the buffs off everybody, allies, enemies, and then does a max HP hit that just nukes them to all holy hell. Like, just an insanely good champion. The interesting thing, like as I've played with her, getting later on, her damage is actually pretty decent. If you build her with some attack, just single target like her A1 ability here, it can actually hit pretty decently hard. So she's a pretty good champion. She's an exceedingly good champion all around. Most importantly though, just for those wave clears. And then it takes us to Demonspawn, and this one, there's not a lot of great options. Honestly, Padma is one of those old school champs that used to be better than she is right now. Umbral Enchantress, I think, is probably the choice here, and we'll get to her in a second. And then obviously you have Skimfos, who's, I think, highly underrated as like a wave clear, an AoE damage dealer. Pretty darn solid, to be fair, but I think the choice has to be Umbral Enchantress. She just offers too much in today's meta, right? She obviously has this nice lockdown provoke ability, which is still really powerful in Arena because it's a 2-turn provoke. There's not really anything you can do about it, and she puts unkillable on herself. And that's just for Arena, where it's a short duration fight. That's really, really strong. She also has this block buffs ability on a 3-turn cooldown as an AoE. That's really, really good for Hydra. The only unfortunate thing is that's really all she brings. She could bring this provoke, but when she does that, she locks all her skills in. That means she can't then place, the block buffs ever again. So it's a little bit of it's a little bit unfortunate that she doesn't quite work for Hydra as well as we might like. But because she's void, there's no weak hits, and with that block buffs on a 3-turn cooldown, she's going to be able to put that up very consistently. So she actually becomes a very, I think, very decent choice for Hydra as far as if you need a block buffs champion. I think she could be a really good choice for you. Then we come to Undead Hordes, and interestingly, there's only 2 Void Epics in this faction, and they're both pretty recent. I didn't even realize that. Ostrox is an interesting choice here. He's got some, unique abilities, I suppose you'd say. The block buffs is a really nice skill, and that's definitely something I'd look at. But I think for my choice, it's got to be Kafru. This is just, I think, a really cool champion and brings a lot of neat stuff. Not to mention the Unkillable on himself with a taunt for 2 turns is a really, really nice skill. And then on top of that, it brings some really nice healing abilities and debuff cleansing. And just kind of an interesting champion all the way around. Also, this passive ability decreasing damage is a really nice one too. So I think Kafru, obviously on my free-to-play account, he enabled my clan boss team. I think this is just a simple choice here for me, but I do see why some people might choose Ostrix, and maybe if you think that, you can convince me why, because I can be swayed on this one. Okay, and when it comes to the Dark Elves, there's really 2 solid choices in Sylar and Madame Saris. But for me, it's got to be Madame Saris. There's not very many champions as good as her. We used to call her a legendary and epic skin, and it was a well-deserved moniker because she has an AoE decreased attack and decreased defense, but on top of that, it strips all buffs from the enemies. Made her an absolute monster in Arena. That was before Polymorph, of course. With Polymorph, not as great, but still, the utility of that AoE decreased defense and attack, that's really helpful anywhere you want to use it in the game, whether we're talking Dungeon Waves, Doom Tower, Curse City, or we're talking Arena. Still really, really powerful. Having this being ability to steal buffs from enemies, placing True Fear or block debuffs on them, also really nice. And another fear here with the A1, and the passive ability has some fear stuff and gives her some shielding. She's just a really, really good champion. Obviously, you just build her with accuracy and speed and watch her go to town. A little bit outdated maybe for Arena with the Polymorph being a part of things, but in general, it's just a really, really good champion. All right, Knight Revenant. It's an interesting choice here. I really like Skull Crown. Faceless has some usage, especially in Faction Wars. Golden Reaper is not a bad choice, but it has to be Whisper. I mean, the Church of Whisper is still strong. Saphira will tell you. She's absolutely insane, especially if you can get her that 6-star Crushing Rend Blessing. She hits so hard and takes so many attacks. Decreased defense and weaken can give her an extra turn if that's what the enemy is under. That skill hits really hard. The A2 obviously just ignores defense when they're under weaken. Massive hitting damage there. She's insane for Hydra, insane for dungeons, insane basically everywhere. A1 even hits hard in places that weaken, and of course she always has a chance of getting an extra turn and does more damage against bosses. She's an insanely strong champion. And, the thing is with the blessings, her weakness, which was low defense, low speed, low HP, is mitigated. So her survivability isn't as compromised with those blessings as it would be normally, making her a lot more viable than she ever used to be. And then when we come to the dwarves, this is an easy choice, even though there's good options here. Lots of good options. Runekeeper, Baradol, Gala, Ragnar, all of those are useful champions, but none of them hold a candle to Dtha, who's absolutely made Clan Boss a joke, and she's an insane champion. Not only is she great for Clan Boss, though, I think a lot of people sleep on her utility outside of that. She can be really strong in Arena, can be really strong in Hydra, because not only does she have the Unkillable, but she has insane healing ability. This A2 can do some really strong heals, and should not be ignored. And so she is not just a Clan Boss champion, though that's where we primarily use her. She is actually very viable in a lot of different areas. Her healing's really insane. Obviously, the block damage ability is really powerful as well. All of it's on a 3-turn cooldown. Definitely somebody you don't want to sleep on. So when it comes to Shadowkin, there's 2 really solid options. Ty is okay, but not somebody I would really build or really look at. What I would look at is Genbo and Obero. They both have very distinct spots where they can be good. Obero is insane for Hydra, but obviously you have to build her for that. It can be a little bit tricky because she's going to self-buff, and so she becomes a mischief target, so you kind of want resistance, but then on the other hand, she's really there to deal damage. It can be a little bit tricky. The other really great option is Genbo, and this is going to be my choice for if I had to choose one Void champion out of this faction. It is Genbo, and the basic reason is that he becomes a very simple champion to build and extremely effective in Arena, even today, especially with the Epic Empowerment ability, right? Got a good speed aura for arena, which is nice. Self buffs himself with increased crit rate and damage, and then extra turn, so he doesn't miss an attack, as he can go in with an AoE ability that is really strong, or a single target, which is really strong. He's an incredibly strong champion, and also has a nice passive ability, so you can never decrease attack him. And when he attacks, he ignores unkillable buffs. So you have to give him increased attack. He pairs really well with like an Arbiter, for example. But this guy is a very strong arena damage dealer, and definitely somebody that I would build, right? Especially early on. Now, obviously, there's better options out there. You know, legendary champions do exist. But if you're looking for an arena nuker, I think Genbo is definitely somebody to look at and worth building. And we're at the end with the Sylvan Watchers, and this one's an easy choice. This is an easy choice because it's White Dryad Nia. She has just this unique ability where she can, that's A2, where she can basically reset one champion's skills. It's a unique ability. It's hard to make work for auto. In fact, it's pretty much impossible, so you gotta have to manual it. But being able to fully refresh or reduce the cooldown of a target's allies by 2 turns is pretty insane. And that's on a 3-turn cooldown, so when booked. So it's a really nice ability. She also has some insane healing with her passive ability. When she gets healed, she heals everybody else on top of it. She has ally protection strengthen as an ability as well, which is really nice. And on top of that, she has this ability to decrease speed as an AoE on her A1. Her kit it's just a lot. There's a lot going on there. You can put some cool sets on her, and with the AoE A1, make that work. She can protect everybody with the ally protection and the strengthen buff she places. And then, of course, the skill reset with a massive heal attached to it is so strong. Not even talking about her passive yet. So, obviously, using her, basically, you can use 2 White Dryad Neods in Hydra and have an insanely strong, full reset type of team and get that kind of trunded damage going over and over. That's definitely an effective way to do it. But regardless of how you approach White Dryad Nia, she's really, really strong and definitely somebody that I would be building out. Everybody should have a White Dryad Nia on their team. And I think, regardless of how you utilize her, whether it's just a kind of a standard protection champion and healer, or you're trying to do a reset build with, in Hydra or something like that, she's incredibly strong. So that's the list of the best Void epics in each faction. Hopefully you guys agree with me, but if not, that's okay. Just let me know which ones you disagree with. I think there are definitely some debates, and maybe I'm overlooking some champions, so I always appreciate when you guys let me know about some champions, because that means I'll go check them out and maybe like, oh, that's somebody I haven't even thought of before. And that can always be a really positive experience for me. So, don't feel shy. Let me know what you think about some of these. Maybe you prefer Skull Crown over Whisper. I don't know why, but if you do, let me know in the comments. Obviously, guys, if you're looking for any account work or you're just looking to build your clan boss team and make it a little bit better, don't forget to visit my website, Deadwoodjedi.com. Outside of that, I just want to say thank you so much for sticking around and watching. And till next we meet, I'm the Deadwood Jedi.